Hello, welcome to beautiful Estonia, Tallinn. My name is Gunnar Larsen and I got invited by the F18 Association of Estonia to come and train these Formula 18s. We will do everything we can to make them better, and hopefully things will work out perfectly. The weather is going to be looking great. We will see light winds, some more wind, and on Sunday it looks to be good as well. So let's see how we go.
So that was my short introduction. Now is here Mr. Gunnar Larsen, F18 heavy sail champion. Introduce yourself.
Heavy?
Yeah, heavy sailing. Heavy sailing champion.
What does tere kurat means?
It's good. Tere kurat. It's good.
I don't know. Ain has written these words down. I'm still not sure what it means. What does it mean? Hello, damn you. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. We now shortly get together for the Friday afternoon session. The idea is that we have an introduction, which we just had, and I want to ask some questions to you as well, because otherwise I'm talking the whole time, and that cannot be the case. The mission after this weekend is that you guys are better sailors, and you know your Formula 18 better than before this weekend. And I really hope, and that's one of the reasons why I'm standing here, is that you can become better sailors, improve yourself, and to get more sailors into this area between Finland and Estonia and the a little bit southerly laid countries below you, is to get a bigger group, a bigger fleet. I understand that you guys are very enthusiastic and that some of you are very experienced and some of you are unexperienced. There is no question dumb enough to ask me, because I think there's no such thing as dumb questions, there's only dumb answers. So please don't hesitate in asking your questions, fire away. If I don't know the answer, then I will be frank with you that I don't know the answer, and I will find the answer and email it to you afterwards. But let's give it a shot, and let me know what your thoughts are. You can always interrupt me when I'm explaining something about anything, and we will try to follow the program. But we are all very human-like, so the program is just the red thread through this weekend, and it gives clarity of what we are about to do, but we will deviate quite a lot of times from the program to because we probably need to. This afternoon's exercises, we just picked up the rib. We have prepared the buoys, the anchors and everything. We've got the megaphone. The idea for this afternoon is that we will do some practice training, and for me that's a chance of seeing who can how handle his or her boat. It's important for me to dip my stick into your level of expertise to see what we need to work on in the next 2 days and in the debrief this afternoon. So what we will be doing is we will be doing one thing that contains a lot of boat handling maneuverability, and it's the starting line. We will start with an exercise around starting, because then I can see starting. A lot of boat handling going on, starting. The idea is that if we have the little rib here, which I will be sitting in, we have a start line, and I will be changing the start line constantly, the rib constantly, so it will be moving like this, and it will be quite a bizarre experience for you. I will be laying the line in that only one boat can pass the line, or maybe two boats. I will be having it port favored, I will be having it starboard favored. I want to see how the fleet adapts to a racing committee that does not have a perfect starting line in the water. Okay, and I want to see how flexible you guys are. So there will be variation in port starboard favored, but there will also be variation in the length of the line. And this buoy will be fixed with the anchor, and with the boat I will be laying stationary. What we do is we do a little buoy upwind, so you have a visual. It's only going to be a 250 meter buoy, and once we've started, you just round the buoy, come back, and we do it all over again. We will use a 3-minute signal. So we have an alarm on the megaphone, and if the megaphone refuses work, then I've got a whistle. So sound whistle, no flags, just sound whistles, and make sure that you have your timer correct. And I will be asking for your attention in terms of attention, and then have my hand raised when the signal of 3 minutes goes on. Then I'll whistle 3 minutes, and you can always ask me how long still, etc. But stay around the boat.
On kellelgi vara seda stopprit? jah. You probably didn't have the timer.
Yes.
You need one.
Yes.
On kellelgi ei ole?
Telefoni peal on ju.
sul on endal ka, meil pole kahte vaja.
Kus mul on endal?
Sul ei ole kella.
Kell on, kella ma võin anda. So I can give my watch or...
Perfect. Yeah,
or
I don't...
You probably have your iPhone, mobile phone.
No, I'll have your watch.
Okay.
I don't own a watch, so that's going to be the first exercise for this afternoon, and then the second one we will finish off the first one. I will scream around. Okay, we are going now to exercise number 2, and it will be 2 races that we will do. First, first race is going to be, let's say, practice race, and the second race you can, so 2 races, first race, practice race, so I can have a good look on how everybody is doing on the course. I will of course take this mark further up, not a normal race course, length, but close by, so we can see. And what we do is 3 laps. So that's easy. 3 minutes, 3 laps. And then for the last bit of the day is going to be a proper race. I will have a proper line in there. We are just using 1 mark in the top, and we will have a gate in the bottom. Okay? So mark in the top, 1 mark, gate in the bottom, and the start line will be... I will first have the start line, and once you've left, I will drop the buoy and leave it as a gate. And then the finish is also going to be the gate. Okay? 3 laps. So we go 1, 2, 3, finish. Okay. I think that is going to be it for today. We will get to a lot more theory tomorrow morning, as you have seen in the agenda. First, I'm very happy that on a Friday afternoon you guys can all take time to work on improvement and on becoming better sailors. If you have any questions on this afternoon's exercise, please let me know.
How many laps practice race? 1?
3.
3 also.
Yeah. It is a proper race, and I would try to win it, but it is a practice race, so you can always expect in a practice race, and it is an exercise to improve your skills, is that the starting line will not be in as a normal race. Okay.
What is our objective on start line?
The objective is as with every race, that's why the buoy is in here, is to be as first at the buoy with respecting the rules in your other competitors. Everybody, that's a good question.
Italian, respecting the rules.
Is that okay, guys? It is now what time? Probably 11:30.
11:30.
Okay. What time can we meet on the water? Let's say at is 12:30 in 1 hour good? Okay. 12:30. And where do we exactly meet? What's the best place to in the shipping lane or where the ferries go? Just out on the left? That's the good place. We're not in the way of the Marines or the Navy.
Can go down, no problem.
Okay, so straight out.
So half a mile out from the harbor and that's it.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, 12:30. We are all out on the water. I will be there with the little black rib with the yellow buoys. Thanks, guys. How was your afternoon?
Nice weather.
Lots of starts?
Yes.
Do you ever train that many starts when you train for yourself? What's your opinion on the exercise itself? Let's start with the start exercise. What do you think?
It's very useful.
And why is it very useful?
To break a start.
Okay.
To like be in situation as we saw we've been there like in various like conditions like psychologically and technically and it was very useful to use to.
It's maybe very extreme to have the line like an harmonica going in and out and wrong and all sorts of ways, but it's sometimes reality as well. When we go to big events where everything is being run professionally and suddenly the start line is not laying correctly, and does anybody care? Not really. If they start, if the race committee decides, okay, let's have a race, then you have to deal with it. And that's the whole idea of being flexible, being adaptable, to actually read the situation on what will be happening. And there's so much stuff that you can already distillate from the starting position on how things probably will be going. And it's based upon assumptions, and assumptions are dangerous, but if you know something more than your competitor, you're already a step ahead. And that's the idea behind this. There were a couple of things that I saw happening, or rather say not so happening. What do you think was good about this exercise with the line, all the differences?
At this moment, everything is good for me. Because I'm learning this technique.
Okay, so
everything is very good for me.
But what was particularly good on this exercise with the starting line?
Okay,
Are you sailing with your son?
No, it's not my son. No.
Okay, but you're sailing together?
Yeah.
Okay.
First time today. Together.
First time? Okay.
So I think we had a lot. We learned a lot today. Because lots of boats in start and start line was really short at the moment.
No space?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe for one or two boats?
So how positioning your boat.
Yeah. And you, for instance. Sorry, next one. Hey, yeah. You first finish your sandwich. Hey, what particular reason? You know, we heard these arguments here.
So, sometimes you wish or not. You're sometimes in the middle of something and you have to deal with it. I mean, as in Kiel, 100 boats in the starting line, and if you suddenly realize that you are on the wrong place, so that it's very bad. And this kind of training or exercises are just good for this sense that you have to think a bit, 1-2 steps before you act. Where the other boats are, how you fit in, how you keep your position, how to start, how to get the best start. That's it.
Yeah. And there is a couple of, I think there is a couple of tricks on how to get a head start on your competition. And we all know that the starting sequence is for everybody the same. The course where the marks are fixed is for everybody the same. It's up to you to make a difference. And that's the fun in sailing, is that when you do the tricks that you have to do to understand what implications it will have to have that start line there in terms of where the course is, and then I would say that it's kind of interesting to measure before the actual start takes place. And this is one of the major points that I want to discuss this afternoon, is preparation, the actual start, preparation. These 2 points are actually everything that you need to think of, you know, besides your boat being prepared correctly and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to go there, but going straight to the start, we can actually break this one up in preparation. What, for instance, you think is important in preparation before the actual start? So it is, let's say, we have a 3-minute countdown, and it's 5 minutes before the start, approximately. What do you think you can prepare to know?
One thing is that I need to decide whether I want to pick right side of the course or left side of the course first. That sort of is one thing. Then because we usually have very short starting lines, so I think it's not so, it's usually quite correct because it's so short. You know, you cannot win very much if you win the pin or win the boat or something.
You are right that you cannot win very much, but you can lose a lot,
Yeah.
right? In that same short distance. So, course side. Which side course? That's one thing. Somebody else. What can you do of preparation before the start?
Starting line. How fast you can get to the starting line. The measurement of the time. Timing.
So, timing to the line.
Yeah. To reach the line.
Okay. Anybody else?
And you have to pick a side, whether it's boat end or pin end.
And why would you want to pick a side?
Because you can gain an advantage by going the right way in the beginning.
So, and that is based upon a lot of arguments. It can be if you see before the start in the prepping time that the left side of the course will be favored, then you can expect that if you are first off the line and you can clearly sail away from the rest of the fleet, then you have an advantage, right? Okay. So, what do we write down? Because we
Pin
already
end
have
or
course
boat
side.
end.
Pin end or boat end? I think we have a couple of points which are valid and important. I will go through the way we do our preparation before the start. What I didn't expect you to say is to have your head, your eyes out of the boat. That is one of the major items already before the start, and this actually starts begins when you leave shore and you're sitting on your boat. First thing we do when we hit the water is to find out if, because there's never a consistent wind in terms of 7 knots straight. It's always 7 knots, 5 knots, 9 knots, 7 knots, variating, right? First thing we do when we sail towards the start is to find out what's the wind doing. If the wind increases, from which side is it increasing, and is it consistent? A consistent shift, or is it an oscillating shift, right? And oscillating will mean that the wind is going from left to right every 20 seconds, every minute, every 2 minutes, or whatever. There's a sequence to it. If it goes consistent to the right, then it's influenced by weather systems, and the wind then gradually, for example, can turn from north towards west over the afternoon or morning, right? So first thing we do when we hit the water is to find out if the wind increases, where is it from? Is it from the left or is it from the right? And by starting that, you're pushing yourself to read the wind, to understand what's going on, because the wind is never the same. And that's where the big gains or the big losses are made. So we have our eyes out on the wind, out on the water, to see what's actually happening. And of course we're sailing the boat, but we are determining what's happening with the wind. Why is the wind, does anybody know why the wind, when it increases, is most of the time from one direction? Let's say if we sail out on starboard with the sail on the port side, and we go out, and when it increases, it lifts the wind, so it turns right. Why would that be?
Because we're in the north side of Earth.
No, that does not have anything to do with that. It has to do with, and I spoke with you briefly after sailing here, is that there is layers of wind on top of each other. And the more higher you go, the less drag or resistance wind has because of water or forest or land or whatever. So the more high up, the more wind there is. That's simple. But it's all divided in layers. And if you draw these layers on top of each other, and this sounds like a meteo story, but it's just knowledge about what the wind is doing for us as sailors. If this is at, let's say, 1,000 meters, then it can be that the wind is from that side at 500 meters, and the wind from here at 250, and we go slowly down. The wind at 50 meters can be from this direction. That's actually all the variations. That's also why planes, sometimes in the middle when we cross the Atlantic, they suddenly lower altitude to find a different direction of breeze, so they save fuel. It's that simple. So we with this knowledge, we know what's actually doing. When the wind increases, when we sail out of the harbor, and we feel that the general idea of the wind is that when it increases, it is from the right, then we know that the upper layer, let's say 10 meters plus, between 10 and 40 meters, because 1,000 meters is ridiculous to think about, because our boats are only 10 meters high, but it's about the principle, so you understand why I'm mentioning this, is when the wind is from the right, when it increases, that's information to use. You know that if it goes right and you're sailing on starboard tack with the sail on port, is that when it increases, you can lift the complete boat and you can pull in your main sheet. Everybody has that feeling, right? But we also know that when the wind increases and it goes left, you can pull in your main sheet, but the boat doesn't go any faster, you're just stalling. What you should do is follow the direction of the wind, bear down, steer down, and then pull in. That's a major difference in sailing upwind. And that's what we determine when we go out from the harbor to the race course to find out, okay, what's the wind doing today, you know? And it can change during the day, so we keep on checking it. So we don't do it once, we do it all day. then our eyes out of the boat. It is really important. You have factories around you. There is smoke signals. There's all sorts of indicators. There is ferries coming by. You know, they have a certain speed, and there's smoke coming out of their chimneys. So you can see, if you take their speed into account, if you see the general wind direction, you can learn from it. If I see other boats sailing, I look at them. Can I learn something from it? Maybe, maybe not. Everything is an indication. Your competitors as well. When somebody is doing a test lap around the first mark, you can see on the, you don't have to actually do it yourself to know what the angle of the wind is. Well, while they are sailing there. 5 minutes later, it can be different. But at least it's information that you just gather. And I think by the sound of this, is that our race doesn't start at the start signal or the preparation signal. It starts when we leave the harbor. It starts when we are, you know, when it actually starts way sooner, because everything needs to be in order. As we all know as sailors, that your boat must be 100% perfect to be able to race. What I miss with all of you in what you always see us doing every single time there is a preparation signal coming up, is we take the boat, we have the sail on port side, we're sitting, so we're on the starboard tack, and we go head to wind. The last couple of years I haven't been sailing a lot with a tactic compass, because I think that the tactic compass is distracting, because by only looking at numbers we are going into algorithm instead of feeling and looking outside on what's actually happening. The compass is a nice little indicator, but sailing on a compass, I think it belongs to the old days. Except when you do a long distance race to Helsinki and there's no land around you anymore. I mean, that's when you really need a compass to know and to use that information to make up your mind, like, okay, you know, this is such a big header. On the other, in other words, we are going so low, we have to tack. If there's no land, it is almost impossible to find your benchmark on how high or how low you are actually going. But mostly when we do long distance races, we're looking at estimate time of arrival anyway on a GPS. And that's one of the skills that gets lost in the last 10-15 years, to only sail on an analogical compass, you know, which turns. And luckily we have the tactic now, which to my suggestion we always set on 10 degrees difference. So we don't do 1 or 5, we set it on 10, because with 10 degrees, that's a major indicator to make a move, let's say. I'm not saying that you should jibe or tack, to make a move, to think, to have that knowledge. Coming back to the start line, if you start making it yourself to, when you arrive at the start boat, is to turn your boat head to wind. Every single race from now, you will always have the same information if you do it in the same way always. Right? And I don't know who was in Kiel, but if you see us sailing in Kiel at the Worlds, every single start, it's almost annoying, because some days were a lot the same. So then we go head to wind, we go head to wind, we go head to wind. But we had made changes in the last, let's say, 2-3 minutes to completely change our strategy before the start, because we were checking the wind, measuring the wind. And when you go head to wind with your boat, you check, okay, line is 90 degrees, set. The top mark is right from the middle. So let me draw that. This is the top mark. Here is this is the wind. So the start should be somewhere here, but it is actually here, right? That's mega valuable information for anybody that wants to be racing in that course, to know that the starting line is, that the course is not square in the water. And of course I am exaggerating, because the wind does this, the wind does that. When there's a little piece of land here, then it goes like that. That's all variables. but you have to start with benchmarking on what you're doing. And that's what I'm actually saying. If you make a conclusion, we go out from the harbor, and it may sound boring, but we measure the wind, we try to understand what the wind's doing when it's increasing, and on the other hand also what it is doing when it's decreasing, because it doesn't have to be that the wind goes left when it decreases, and when it increases it goes right. That does not have to be the case. We're measuring it, we go to the starting area, first thing we do is we say, hello, we're here, do you have to write us down? We measure the wind, and we do, and I know that you today did not have the time to do a practice start, but you see us always starting how tired we are. If we had 3 races and we still have to do a 4th race, we are doing a practice start. We are doing a head to wind to measure the wind and to see if the line is square in the water compared to the course, and we do everything every time the same. And by repeating that constantly over all those years that we've been racing, we now know if we have to race in Tallinn or Greece or United States or Buenos Aires at the Worlds, we have valuable information which we can implement directly, because we're doing it the same. It's not a lucky factor that let's say the top 10 is always pretty good off the line. Measuring, knowing, always try to be one step ahead of anybody around you. Okay? So preparation. Wind, course, start, and with wind I explained head to wind. With course, it is during your head to wind that you see if the course is mega long, extremely short, if the buoys and the course is laying symmetrical compared to the starting area. And this is actually what I see, and I can put 10 more points down here. What I can see is that the start is the last point. That's the actual start. But before that we had a list of stuff that we went through automatically because we learned ourselves, or we trained ourselves to do so. To have that benchmark, everybody understands what benchmark is, eh? To always have this something to hold on and to know, like, okay, this is the situation here locally. So this is all true, but there's a mega list in front of it that we work through every single time. And when we forget items, we just feel less secure on the course. And one other thing, how the actual line I want to talk a little bit about, because that is something that you can have the most gain. Let's say that this is the pin end. It can move that way, it can move that way. Wind's coming from here. We have the Navy yard here with a little with a pole and a chimney smoke. I will draw the line like it is, like this. So once again, to repeat and to make sure that it's clear, when this is the start line like this, we go head to wind. We check if the line is symmetrical. We check if the mark is symmetrical. It might be here. We had big races in Eurocat Karnak, where most sailors, they go into automatic, and start a sequence, perfect. Start, perfect. They start sailing, and after 4 or 5 minutes in 20 knots of breeze sailing, we make quite a distance in the multi-hull. That's why it's so fun. It's fast. Finding out that the mark was so far to the right is that the leg on starboard was only maybe a minute, and the rest was on port, and they overstood the mark with, I think it was a fleet of 80, 90 Formula 18s. I think 80% of the fleet was reaching into the mark because they were just not paying attention. I mean, that cannot be the case. We're racing, and by doing every check always at the same time, before every race, you're just up to date. And by dragging yourself through this cyclus always, we also, when we have a little bar or when we drink, we see that the committee is actually taking the buoy out at the top mark. It's not a surprise for us that they do it. We keep on looking, we keep on checking on what's going on all day until we go to shore. Then we just relax and whatever. But until that moment, we see everything. And I want that you imprint in your brain is that you want to be on top of your race. How small, how big, doesn't matter. The fun in this sailing game is to be or to beat always that guy that you're fighting, right? And it's so easy to be smarter with sailing if you have the right information, based upon the right tips and tricks. The actual start. One point, starting 1 second early is worse than to start 5 seconds too late, right? Because it takes more time to go back and to restart and all that sort of stuff. And I should be careful what I say, because in every big event I always have OCS with my crew, because we're so eager and we think that we know where the line is, but nobody has a line, like the America's Cup. Is that we always have OCS. Last weekend I was racing in the North Sea Regatta, last race OCS, and my wife said, I was sailing with Lisa, she said, I think we're early, and when she says that we're early, then okay, let's take it and let's continue, because now it has no use anymore to go back. But in hindsight we should have gone back, because we could have, anyway, that's always better to go back. What's the best way? There's one thing, I made a little video just now. What's the best way of knowing, let's say 1 second before the start, where the line is in the middle? Can anybody?
To use the shore marks.
Yeah, can you show me?
I can. You should sail here and check some mark, and
yeah,
then you can make a line that you can use also here.
For who is this? Thank you. For who is this news? For who is this new? For you? Anybody here? For you? It's a extremely simple trick to know where the line is, especially when you're sailing in a bay like this, completely surrounded except for the little finish part. It's called a transit. You just take the point of view, and I've seen nobody actually doing it today. You take your boat outside the line. If we didn't use a flag, but if this is the starting flag, then you just look over the starting flag to the pin end, and you can actually see that there's probably a car standing here. It's red, it's yellow, sorry, it's red. It's a Ferrari. And once you see that the Ferrari red is the line, if you then go to the starting sequence, 2 minutes to go, you sail around here. What you actually do is you look over the pin, and of course there's boats. So the crew, who is actually calling out the number of boat lengths towards the line, that's a typical job for the crew to do. It's the length towards the line. It is to warn the skipper, okay, there's a boat coming under us, there's a boat coming over us. It's the time, and we will continue a little bit later during the start what the role of the skipper should be, or what the role of the crew would be. But actually, 2 minutes to go, you have to estimate the number of boat lengths to the line. I would say that it's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. The crew calls out, okay, four boat lengths towards the line. If you are closer to the pin, you can actually see what's happening. It's simple mathematics. If you start practicing this, and my suggestion is that tomorrow we will do an exercise, and I will explain that in the morning, how to actually implement this trick, this tip. I will anchor the boat, I will anchor the pin, and then we go one by one. We will go one by one to the middle of the line. We will make an extreme long line, so it's even more difficult. You will be astonished. You will be unbelieved on what you actually think the line is, or what the actual line is. It's unbelievable. But for tomorrow. So if this is 4 boat lengths and you've got 2 minutes to go in these conditions, then you're probably pretty early. I would say that with 4 boat lengths, you want to be 1 minute, and we go to the point of timing that one of you pointed out. You let's say that this is 1 minute, and you're slowly crawling towards the start line. If you see the time coming down, what's actually happening when you come closer towards the line, you can see the little red Ferrari that you're still behind the line. And once you're on the line and you look over the line, you can see the car. And when you can see the car at the gun, the starting point, you're over early. And it has everything to do with the crew sitting here and looking over the bow. And there's of course a little spinnaker pole, and there is bows. And when you have red hulls like the Ropai boat, then they catch you earlier. So that's something we try to avoid when we stick our boats, is to not have the bow colored, because if a race committee is looking over the line, they see the yellow boat or the blue bow or the pink bow. Well, that's aim, we've got them. And even when you are not over early, and you had a perfect start, then they are even triggered to say, like, he might be over early, That's what happens, but you have to deal with that. So finding the line, knowing where the line is, and everything into account, time, distance to the line, and where you want to go, because you had your measurements, had to wind, if the course is symmetric. That's a lot of information that you have to digest, but if you start doing it right now, then you will always have the same information available, and you will always be prepared better than people that lack that information. Okay? Any questions so far?
So is this 4 boat lengths your sort of start box? That you're waiting, and I don't know, 30 seconds to go, and then you say, okay, now we go? Or you just gradually go, I don't know, maybe 2 boat lengths and try to attack from there?
It completely depends on the situation, if it's windy, if it's light weather, if there's a lot of current, if there are a lot of waves, how small the starting line is, how large the starting line is. So there are so many parameters that you have to take into account to actually come up with your plan. I mean, an extreme situation is when you have a current which is big, let's say 4 or 5 knots. I don't know if you have currents like that here.
No.
But breast, prepare yourself, because it is on the point of Brittany, but still it's not the highest current they have, because the higher current is in Saint-Malo. They have a high and low tide difference of 12 meters. 12 meters coming in, going out, it's like 5-6 knots. I've done long distance racing around that area, that with let's say 15 to 16 knots of breeze, we could not pass a point, because there was so much current that if we tried to pass it, we were thrown back away, and the whole fleet piled up, went in circles until one made it, and he was gone. So Brest is, you should really learn and read more about current and specifically when you go to Brest, to the Europeans. But if the current is from right to left, very strong, and this is the starting committee, and this is the line, then it is very obvious that if the wind is from here, and it's only 5 to 6 knots, is that 1 minute before the gun, it is not a smart thing to be laying here, because if you want to start here, and obviously I have made in the drawing that it's favored to be starting at the starting vessel, before the minute is passed, you probably will end up somewhere here. So the trick then will be is to keep your options open, to keep your alternatives open, and just it is quicker and easier to come from here. Hello, to come from here. A bit late. Welcome. It is quicker to come from the windward side of the current and to in maybe 10 or 15 seconds to make it to the race committee vessel than if you drift it down here. You have to tack back against the current, only 5-6 knots of breeze, and you will have a shit start because you're just simply too late. And last but not least, maybe the most important thing, not in control. And with that, I want to avoid saying in control, because there's more things about a sailing race that you cannot control, especially the wind. I tried to explain, how we measure the wind and how where it all comes from and all these different angles and direction. But if you cannot control the wind, then you probably have to adjust yourself in the sails. So that's a really important one. This is one situation which is extreme. It can also be the other way around, of course, when the current is from that side. It's all about symmetrics on the course and on to be exactly in the right spot at the right time to have the best start. And an easy thing to say is that you can pass most competitors during the start. During the race, that's going to be even more tricky. So we will go through that tomorrow morning on how we will do that exercise, the starting, finding the line. I will write it down. Okay. What have we concluded so far? Please.
Concluded.
Yes.
Go and see what happened in the sea, wind situation, what's happening on the ground. Measure where you see the starting line pointing somewhere on the land.
The transit.
Transit, yes. Whatever.
Eyes out of the boat. You mentioned in look what's going on. To gather as much information before the actual start of the race as you can. Sorry. Routine. Yeah, make a routine of it. Almost a protocol. Like, okay, we have to do this, this, and this, and this, and you will notice that you will become much more secure and certain on what you're actually doing on the course or during the race. And yes, you will have moments that you have drawn the wrong conclusions based upon the right information, but that's what benchmark does. If you don't know where you are ever, then you cannot learn from it. If you benchmark, then you at least can say, okay, we did it the wrong way, but now we know what we did wrong, so the next time we can do it right. And that's the same with your, and tomorrow morning we will go through strategy versus tactics. It is really important that if you make a plan together on your race strategy, because the strategy is so it's clear for everybody, strategy is the big picture on what the big plan over the course has to look like, and tactic is more when you meet other boats. That's on the course. It is it's an on the course almost collision. It's around the buoys. It is the 3 boat length circle with the boat where you can implement tactics to win 1 or 2 boats. But the major gains or losses are done with right or wrong strategy. But at least if what I suggest, and we always, okay, the race committee is starting anyway, but when I'm sailing with anybody, we always agree on what our mutual plan is. Because if we don't agree on a mutual plan on what our general strategy will be, then we're unable to learn. Because if we haven't agreed upon something, then what are we talking about in the evaluation on what went wrong or right? So one thing is communication with the 2 people on board, and with all that knowledge, measuring the wind, measuring the course, measuring the start line, all seeing it, and bringing this routine into it. You have a total plan together. You go onto the course, and your plan might not be executed the perfect way because somebody else has exactly the same plan, and they are trying to ruin your race. They are not really trying to ruin your race, but it feels like it. If they don't let start you the way you want to start, then you have to stay flexible and adapt to the situation. But now it comes, the most important thing is you made a plan. If you have to tack out, then a lot of sailors continue going because they had to tack. But if you really believe in your mutual plan that you've made together, you tack out, you find a new lane, tack back to execute your plan. And that's one of the I would say really big secrets of successful teams or sailors, is that once they've agreed to a plan, they'll stick to it whatever, until there is a moment, there's a cloud coming with new breeze and new wind and different situation. If the situation changes drastically, then it takes drastic measures to adapt to the situation again. So there's always an if, there's always a but. But in general, if you make a plan, you've thought about it, based upon the right information, you go for it. Can we agree on that? And what is extremely important, and with anybody that's going to be sailing a race with me one day, I'm looking for consensus. I'm looking for an agreement. Okay, well, I see this, I think this, we've done that. What do you think? And then if somebody thinks something completely different, then we have a problem. But I'm always looking for consensus, because it's the good way to go together. Or you go totally shit together and you learn something from it, or it's glory.
What if your plan sucked? Like you understand you have made a plan, and the plan actually isn't looking at all at the start line. How do you adapt?
It goes automatically. It is when the plan is completely ruined because of what sort of reason. You have to get into damage control. And winning big events is about being as consistent as possible in your results. I would say that if you don't have to sail first and second places at big events to win, but if you're constant in the top 6, then you have a good chance of winning in a big event or an event. And when the plan is down the drain because something happened why you cannot execute your plan, then you have to adapt quickly. And the more times you've learned from plans going to waste and you have to change your plan during the race, the better your benchmark is, as long as you've based it on the same information constantly, on the routine that you've been doing. I would say that this is one of the reasons why some of the superstars in sailing are acting like robots sometimes. For instance, in the Olympic class, it is extremely hard to win races, and some sailors, like in the NACRA 17, the Olympic multi-hull, Billy Besson and Marie, they have become 4 times world champion in the last 4 years. That's based upon that they have a routine on everything they do is always the same. So they always gather the same information. So the chance of their plan going to waste is becoming smaller by every year that they sail. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far? Some general stuff, and we will pass on settings tomorrow morning as well. But I've been behind a couple of the boats, and especially the Capricorn. I saw you were saying the Capricorn, eh? In the upwind, it looks like you're steering the perfect angle of the boat compared to the wind. You have to be a little bit quicker in adapting when there's a little bit of an angle change in the wind, but your main sheet was too open constantly. So I think you are looking for not oversheeting your main sheet. You know what I mean? But by being afraid of oversheeting, it's too open and you lose a lot of power. And I've seen it with some other, I think it was with you as well, but your battens were too loose in the top, so you did not have the right shape mainsail in the top. What you are looking for is there is telltales, the little woolly things on the back of your mainsail. In the top of your mainsail, they are not so interesting actually, but on the back, on the leech, on the back end of the sail, trailing edge. The trailing edge on the back. What you're looking for is, let's say, in the first panel, second panel, is that the telltale on the back, for 25% flows backwards, and then 75% it's a little bit oversheet in these conditions. So your sail was too open, and I think I've pointed it out at your boat as well, is that the mainsail was a little bit too open, and it was your boat as well, right? It's hard to know where you have to send it, where you have to set it, but you have to feel it. If you oversheet in these conditions, then the pressure will drop, of course. Everybody knows that. And I always say it's better to have it 5 centimeters open than 1 centimeter oversheeted. But I definitely saw that there is room for improvement in the upwind, is that you have to play a little bit. You're sailing it too safe by having it open, and it's costing just a lot of pressure. And especially when there's not a lot of pressure, you want the maximum number of pressure that you can get, right? Then the jibs, I saw a large variation in the jib track setting, so how far you have your jib out. In a monohull, you can actually, because the speed is lower, you can actually have the jib track car a lot further into the middle, and then release the sheet a little bit so you still have twist. Everybody understands that, eh? In a high performance boat like these cats are, and today the speed of the boat isn't high, but it is, if you compare it to the wind speed, then the boat speed is very high, in a high performance boat. So what you do is, I saw a lot of jib track cars to the outside, being completely open. On the infusion you can have it easily to the first pedestal that hits the front beam, and then play. The further you have it in, the more critical your sheet tension, your sheet load becomes. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. And the jib is one of the major driving forces in these conditions upwind. And you can have it a little bit more in, and most people think that the jib car is how far you have it out or in is depending on how much wind there is on the water. But that's not really the case. You can have it in when it's the sea state is flat, like today, and you need to have it out when the sea state is extremely rocky. So you probably have conditions here where the wind is coming from this is north, when it comes in, from the north. When there's not a lot of wind, but it's very wavy, that's where you want to have it out completely. And the reason for that is that the slot between the mainsail and the jib needs to be very forgiving. You can imagine that when there's not a lot of wind, 5-6 knots of wind, and it's really rocky, so it's choppy waters, is that the top of the mast, it is moving maybe a meter, 1.5 meter all sides, because the boat, when you sail upwind, it is really slamming a lot, and the top of the main is doing a lot, and the disturbed wind because of the chopping, you can actually fix that by having the jib out. So when it's choppy, you have it out. When it's flat, you can have it in. So with 25 knots of breeze with flat water, you can have it in. But with 25 knots of breeze and big waves, you have it out. It's depending on the sea state and not on the wind. This is a really important one. Okay? Any questions on that?
Just to clarify, so today you would have it one post in from the outside?
Yes. And not any further, because you can take it further, but the sheet angle on an F-18, because it's sheeted from the
Could you draw it?
front beam, yeah. If this is the jib, then we all know that this distance is quite long compared to the width of the jib. And the sheeting angle of, now I have to draw it right. Sheeting angle is like this. The sheeting angle is quite vertical on the jib. So if you have the jib track car in, and you have to release sheet to not oversheet the jib, then in the top it will be open, in the bottom it will be closed. That's why the first pedestal, and I think it's the same on the Capricorn. It's the same pedestal that sits there. You can imagine that if you release here 1 millimeter, is that it opens up a lot here and not a lot here. While if you have your when you have your sheet like this, then you release it, then it opens up completely. So because it's so vertically sheeted, it is quite important to not have it in too far. But today I saw that a lot of people have it out too far, depending on the sea state. Yeah, flat water in, really rocky waves, you can have it out. Have to have it out. Okay.
So from the center, one post open, shallower.
Yep, yep. And when we have it completely out, then we use that little line to not have it. When you tack, it's quite a force when it's windy, and the cars, they can actually explode when they go all the way to the end, because there isn't a rubber stopper. So we just make sure that the rope sits there to take the load when it tacks or jibes. On position on the boat, I had a couple of questions this morning also on where to sit when. What I noticed is that I spoke with you this morning on the positions of the boat. And I saw with most crews that they were sitting both on the windward side when the spinnaker was up in the downwind. And in the upwind I don't have any comments, because everybody felt to be sitting on the right spot, except for the F-18. If in the F-18 you really have to have your crew in front of the front beam, and you have to sit yourself in these conditions at the front beam to get the nose in. This is a little bit less the style of an Infusion or a Capricorn, the newer types, but in your boat, when you see from a distance your boat sailing, then it's always laying a little bit backwards in the upwind, and that's what you want to avoid. You want to have it grippy into the water with the bows and the transoms free of the water. Okay?
You try to sit as front as possible.
Okay. But in the downwind, was there a reason why you were sitting on the same side?
Not particularly.
For you, maybe?
From the same side.
Same side? Was there a reason?
Because of the lifting more. It was sitting down.
In the downwind?
Yes.
Okay, but I saw you guys doing it and you looked the most in balance, because what you can actually do is when you have the crew on the leeward side and the skipper near the front crossbar, is that every little puff accelerates the boat a little bit better. And when you release your main sheet, when the boat is heeling towards the leeward side of the boat, your mainsail, your jib, your spinnaker, everything just works better. So in these flat conditions, it is really a good suggestion to have the crew sitting on the leeward side, and the crew can actually sit like this near the front crossbar, looking perfectly at the spinnaker what's happening. One disadvantage for the crew is to keep overview, because when you go to the leeward side, it's harder to see what's going on. In terms of perspectives and around you on the course. But if you start practicing it, I don't know what the weather forecast for tomorrow in wind and for the day after will be, but that's a suggestion I would like to give for tomorrow as well, is to start doing that. And one last important bit is the height of the dagger boards in the downwind. This morning I saw a couple of boats having their dagger boards completely down and raising them one by one after every jibe. But if you have them 50 centimeters up in the downwind, you don't have to touch them anymore, especially with this course in these conditions. You just use these dagger boards underwater to have grip, and with that grip you make sure that if a gust hits, if the wind hits you, you can actually bear down very easily, and you actually convert that pressure into forward motion. But you want to read the wind, and by having the position of the crew and the skipper in this way, so skipper in the windward, crew at the leeward, in that position, and the dagger boards up, you can actually steer away every little puff and just go make a very good VMG in terms of going deep. And if you have to, for what reason, to go high because there's a boat passing you, you just ask, okay, can you please come up? And you will notice that if the crew comes up, the boat will drop and the speed will increase, but your angle is going up as well. It's all logical. Okay, guys. Well, this is it for today. I had a very good view on what's going out there, and we'll use it in the morning. Is everybody okay with 9:30 tomorrow?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We will first go to we will first go to a lot of theory. From 11 o'clock we are explaining the afternoon exercises. 12 o'clock we have a meet on the water for those exercises, and I will take everything what I've seen today and reflect on what we've done. Tomorrow we also start with a little video of what we've done today. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you for your attention. See you tomorrow morning.
See you.